welcome to the Bella Grace podcast, where we are empowering you to embrace the beautiful grace found in recovering your authentic self. And this season, we've been telling stories of people who are living a sober life and having fun doing it. We've also been sharing stories about people whose lives have been impacted by addiction of a loved one. And today we have my friend Diane. She is the founder and CEO of Advanced Mind Health, a virtual no repeat client therapy practice helping high profile professionals eliminate self sabotage and substance use habits in only 1 to 3 sessions with a 99% success rate. Geez, that's amazing. That is, that's
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
People kind of find that hard to believe, but it's all true. So
yeah.
I can jump in, or you can ask me a question. Where would you like
I
to
was
start?
just gonna, yeah, I was gonna say, so tell us what led you to this practice? Like, what led you to wanting to go into this? Because this is a very specific niche. And then we'll kind of roll into what your practice is and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you were saying, my life was extremely impacted by a loved one. My late husband, he passed 10 years ago, and he was 6 years sober when he passed. But when we first met, probably about 7 years into the relationship, he was actually when we first met, he was a recovering drug addict. He was a musician, so he was on the road a lot, and the recreational drug use just led to that dependence, which he was able to get himself off of quite easily. And then we were together probably 7 years. We had just purchased our first home together, and he had what I could only call a nervous breakdown one night. He just crashed. He was just overwhelmed. He had that perfectionist
Mm.
tendency where he was just trying so hard to be a people pleaser and be perfect, and then he was taking on way too much, and
Yeah.
one small dose of criticism about the way he was doing things just led him to, like I said, crash. And I had never seen anything like it. I had no experience in any kind of mental health issues at all. And he was just writhing on the floor, like just crying, saying, "What is happening to me?" So all I can think of it was a nervous breakdown. So it was diagnosed as depression. He was put on medication, which didn't work. Different medication didn't work. Over the years, he tried so much, but he was always a heavy drinker. So antidepressants are going to cancel out any depression medication, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
eventually the depression got so bad, and he said the only thing that helped was drinking. And so that led to an addiction. So he struggled for, oh gosh, like almost 20 years. He was in and out of rehab 3 times. He didn't ever want to drink, though, which is why I stayed. He tried so hard. And then when he failed, everyone is really familiar with the guilt, the shame, and the remorse when you relapse. And my number one message to people is, don't beat yourself up because it's not your fault. It's not a choice you are making. This choice comes from your subconscious programming, which is a term we're hearing more and more these days, and mostly because it's so important. Our subconscious minds run 95 to 97% of our behaviors, our decisions, our actions. And when you relapse, or when you're trying not to pick up or trying not to use, you are fighting that decision with only 5% of your decision making power. It's your mind
Yes.
that is giving you that craving, that is giving you those justifications, giving you the, oh, it's just one. oh, it'll be fine, nobody will know, all of that stuff running through your head, those aren't your thoughts. Those are thoughts coming from your subconscious programming, right? And
Yeah.
so I watched him suffer so bad. He would lock himself in his office and he would just become this pacing bear, and he'd just say, leave me alone. He'd go, you have no idea how hard this is. And the pain in his face when he used to say that, I just felt helpless, which is why it affects the family, because we want to do something and whatever we try doesn't work. And that's what starts to make us, shift our beliefs and our minds, and it reflects on how we look at ourselves and how we desperately start to be codependent and all of that stuff. So he passed. He finally, actually, he did get sober when I took him to CAMH in Toronto, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and they put him on lithium, which evened him out. But he said, I don't feel sad anymore, but I can't feel joy. And I think that's when he started giving up on his life, because he lived his life. He was retired, helped take care of the house, the dogs. We don't have children, or didn't have children, but I could see that he was just going through the motions. And then finally he passed of cancer. And I think he knew it was coming, because he would say all of these things on Facebook, like many people do when they feel like they're getting close to death. I wonder who's going to be at my funeral. I wonder, what's going to happen. And this was a man who was always terrified of death. All of a sudden, he was at peace. Anyway, so fast forward to a few years later, because he was so ill for so long, when he did pass, I just felt this overwhelming sense of relief. And I felt guilty about that, right? But now I was able to live my life without having to worry about leaving him alone, or like I couldn't travel because he didn't like to travel, and he didn't like me to travel on my own. Like there was all kinds of things that, and those are choices I made, right? I'm not blaming anybody for it. But, because I was deeply cared for him and deeply in love with him, and we had a great relationship, and you make sacrifices. But when he passed, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I can do whatever I want. I can go wherever I want. It was just this overwhelming freedom. And so it wasn't until, like at least 3 years later where the grief started to hit.
Yeah.
And I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I felt so lonely. And so I started looking for therapy to help me. And I went to one talk therapy session and I left feeling worse. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. And I'm like, I'm not going to grief counseling groups. I just didn't feel it was for me. And so somebody said, have you tried hypnotherapy? And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I did some research. And of course, because I'm Googling it, I was targeted for the ads of the method that I actually ended up training in and opening my practice in. So it was everything fell into place. Like, as I look back, it was exactly, I was at the right time at the right place. Everything fell in line. The universe was just giving me this. So I trained in what is called rapid transformational therapy. And it's very new. It's only been around like less than 10 years. I think 2015, Marissa started teaching it. It was developed by Marissa Peer. She was voted Britain's best therapist, and she's one of the top 500 therapists in the world. And she's a best-selling author. Many of you might know her from Mind Valley. Anyway, she's absolutely incredible. She was a psychotherapist for over 30 years before she started incorporating medical hypnosis into her practice, and her clients were getting better. So she developed and upgraded many tools, which some psychotherapists use and some don't. Some are standalone tools. And that allows me to, because I always knew I wanted to help people like my husband. We were just talking, Teresa, that, Marissa developed this method because people in emotional pain, she wanted there to be a faster solution than going to therapy month after month or week after week, because that helps sort of dissipate the symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't address the root cause. So not that I have anything against talk therapy, it's very helpful for a lot of people, but rapid transformational therapy works much faster. And it is a combination between psychotherapy and medical hypnosis. So imagine being in a talk therapy session, but with your eyes closed and your body relaxed. Because in that state, you are able to access your mind, your subconscious mind, so much
Yeah.
easier. And you focus on your thoughts. And I ask the client questions and I'll say, tell me the first thing that comes into your mind. And they'll answer the question and they'll say, oh, wow, that's interesting. So I take them through a series of tools. It's a process to really find the root cause. And I do this within the first 20 or 30 minutes. And then once we have that cause, then we begin to look at it and turn it upside down and shift perspective and ask questions. And I take you through this process. And so by the end, people are like, blown away, really. They say a weight has been lifted off of me, or I feel so much lighter and freer. Other words I get all the time. Or with my anxiety clients, we'll finish the session and they'll be like, oh my God, I just feel this peace over me, like it's gone. So that's, that can happen. It's not always typical. Usually within the first week, people will really notice changes, and then over the next couple of weeks, because what I do is once we do the work in the session, I leave you with a 15 to 20 minute audio recording, and that the client has to listen to daily, because now that the root cause is gone, your mind isn't resisting you telling it what you want. Because the number one job of the mind is to help us survive, right? But the number one rule of the mind is it will always follow our instructions. It will do what it thinks we want it to do. But the only way we can communicate with it is in that state of hypnosis, where it becomes very open and receptive and suggestible. Stanford University just did a study on this in 2016, and it's scientifically proven that when our bodies are relaxed and we're focusing on our thoughts, our minds open up. And this is why we can install those new thought patterns. It's creating new neural pathways. So that's what led me to my practice. And my message now is to just, do as many interviews as I can to empower people to make them realize it's not their fault what's happening, right? And when you get to that root cause, when you figure out why your mind is compelling you to pick up, then you can easily reverse it. Just like I was saying, I've worked with many people struggling with addictions, different kinds, behavioral, alcohol, drug use, and these, I know these are not bad people. Like, it hits everybody, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
addiction does
no
not.
stigma anymore.
Yeah, addiction doesn't discriminate. It can happen to
Absolutely.
anybody. I always say that.
Absolutely.
Like, I always laugh when people tell me, "Oh, well, you don't look like a drug addict." I'm like, "Well, what does a drug addict look like?" Like,
Yeah.
they look like
Right.
you look like you never did drugs. You're,
Yeah.
so well put together and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't discriminate. I've
Yeah.
known people who grew up in the most high class of family become a heroin addict.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And this is
No.
why I work with people so quickly, because, people don't have time to leave their jobs, leave their families to go to like a full inpatient, drug rehab center. And it can be really expensive.
Yeah.
So, that's why I say when you explore why you have this issue, you can reverse engineer it simply by communicating with your mind in a very deep state. Like I was just telling you about the Percocet person, my client, who had a Percocet habit for 6 years. And before our session, because I insist that my clients be clean before we work together. And for opioids, it was like a 72-hour window where I was like, you can't use this for that time. And I said, go to detox, do whatever you have to do, be medically supervised in order to get clean, and then come and work with me so that we can get rid of the cravings. And she hadn't eaten or slept in 3 days. And by the end of the session, after the work was done, she started falling asleep. And when I finished recording her audio, because I said, if I record your audio and you're sleeping, I'm just going to end the meeting, just get some rest. But at the end of the audio, her eyes opened up and she sat up, and I said, how do you feel? She goes, I feel funny. Like you sort of feel like that you've just woken up, kind of a bit of a feeling, but also your mind is completely shifting and changing everything. Like your neurons are just kind of going, okay, it's dissolving those old thought patterns, right? So that's the time when you want to install the new ones. And I said, and how else do you feel? She's like, I'm starving. And she had this huge smile on her face. So
which is proof in itself for an opiate addict, because when you're going through the withdrawals and I shared right before we got on the call that I took opiates for almost 7 years for my back. And so I know, like, when you come off of opiates, like the last thing you want to do is eat.
Yeah. And this was something that even before the session, she was agitated. She goes, I don't know if this is working. And I'm like, you don't have to like judge it. You don't have to make anything happen. Just close your eyes and listen to the sound of my voice. That's all you have to do. And then we have conversations and I ask her questions. We look at things. So it's very much like a therapy session, except it's very specific, the tools that I take you through. And it just really shifts everything in your mind, because they'll say, how does it feel to discover that? Or, do we need to hang on to those beliefs anymore? Are you ready to let them go? And simply through very powerful words and through repetition, the mind starts to dissolve those pathways. So it's pure neuroscience. It's neuroplasticity. So
that's what I was going to say. It's very, because our brain, I think people think that there's this belief out there that this is just the way I'm always going to be. This is who I am, and I'm always going to be this way. And that couldn't be further from the truth, because our brain is moldable and pliable, and we have the ability to change it and change our thought processes and change the way we react to situations. They're not embedded in there. They're movable.
Yeah. And with this kind of therapy, Teresa, it's great because there's not a lot of work involved. Like there's not a lot of hard emotional work to do, right? Which is, I know why I avoided therapy for a long time. It's like, oh, this is going to be hard. And I say to my clients before we start, I say, first of all, know you're in a safe space. And I want you to be proud of yourself, because a lot of people just sit in those feelings and they don't move forward. And again, why do they do that? That's their minds making them procrastinate, right? Because like I said, 95% of our decisions, our actions, our behaviors come from our subconscious mind, which is why we procrastinate. Our mind is holding us back. It's blocking us. It's keeping us in a certain place, right? And I say to my clients, if you're ready to challenge that, in a very relaxed environment, then you should feel really proud of yourself for doing this for yourself, because, and it is very relaxing and very comfortable. A lot of my clients say that it's like a spa for their mind. So it's like going in for a massage, but instead of me massaging your muscles, I'm massaging your thoughts. So it's very relaxing and it's very enlightening, because in the state of hypnosis, basically it's just a focus on your thoughts. It's a very natural state that we fall into. It's why when we're engaged in a movie, we don't notice somebody walk into the room. or when everybody has experienced pulling into their driveway and they don't remember the last 10 minutes of the drive. So or daydreaming or zoning out, we call it, right? So it's as simple as that, is when you just close your eyes and relax your body, your mind goes, oh, okay, because the body isn't moving, then I can relax the nervous system. And that means it opens up, like similar to our senses, right? They say when people lose their sight, their sense of smell immediately gets greater. So it's the same thing. When your body is relaxed, your mind opens up and it listens more intently, and suggestions go in much deeper and much quicker. So it's a very powerful methods, and I'm excited to share it. So the power we do have over our minds, just so I can just touch on this briefly. There's two ways that the mind learns. One is through the words we say to ourselves, and two is through the images we create in our imagination, right? And because we've all heard this before in the 80s or 90s when they were studying video games, that our minds don't know the difference between reality and imagination, right? And so it uses our imaginations and our words to create that blueprint. And it does this in a couple of ways, because like I said, the number one job of the mind is to help us survive. And how does it do that? It moves us towards pleasure and away from pain. And it keeps us in the familiar and away from the unfamiliar. Because while man has evolved, our minds still think that we're living in caves. This is how the human was wired. Because if we were living in caves and we were to go and explore a new area of the jungle, that could be a threat to our survival. So our mind this is why we have our comfort zone and why it's so hard to get out of it. It's not us, it's our minds. But all we need to do is step out of it, make that whatever the new boundary is, make that familiar. And then your mind's like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. That was safe, right? And then you just stretch it a little bit more. And then the whole pain pleasure thing, this is why people develop addictions, right? They have these addictions that develop in them because usually people that develop addictions are highly sensitive, highly creative people. And these people see the world differently and they feel the world so deeply, right? We let everything go to the bottom of our hearts and they stay there, and it affects us, it impacts us, and our mind starts to shift. Because as soon as we pick up or have our first drink or do our first hit or whatever, your mind goes, hey, there's pleasure, there's relief from all of this emotional pain we have buried inside of us that we are burdened by. So let's have more of that, because that's the stuff that's going to keep us away from this pain. But when you tell your mind being clean and free is pleasure, and the drugs or the alcohol is pain, you just have to flip that, because your mind creates this addiction to compel you towards the pleasure, because your mind will always compel you towards the pleasure. And in the beginning, yeah, it's fun, but after a point, it's not pleasurable anymore. And that's when you can flip, right? Because all of these thoughts will bubble up from your subconscious mind. But if you buy back into them, you are just telling your mind, yes, you're right, and I'm wrong. But if you say to your mind, thanks for giving me that craving, but from now on, I'm going to flip it. The pleasure is going to be clean and free. And you imagine yourself waking up, feeling energized, feeling good, feeling not hungover or strung out or whatever. And if you do that enough, you have to do it repetitively and for at least 3 weeks, right? Because how long do they say it takes to form a habit? Like go and look up Dr. Joe Dispenza, it's neurons that fire together, wire together. It's like, I say to my clients, it's like learning the words to a song, how you want to feel, right? Because learning the words to a song, you have to listen to them over and over and over and over again. And finally it's there, and it's there so deep. You sort of make that pathway so deep that you'll never forget the words. And then sometimes you'll like walk through your day and it'll pop into your head, the song. And it's like, so it's influencing you without even thinking about it. So this is how we want to control our minds.
Yeah, I'm a 90s kid. I was born in the 80s. I'm a 90s kid. So I am from the era of when we would get the cassette tape and the lyrics were on the inside, on the folded, the insert. And to this day, there are still songs that I know every word of the song to it, from the early or the late 80s, early 90s.
Absolutely.
Because I sat there and read it and repeated it and sang it and sang it, and it doesn't matter how long it's been, I can still pull those words out.
Right. But, this is how our minds work. We groove in those pathways, and your mind knew that you wanted to learn the words to that song, and it kept them there. But when you say to your mind, I don't want that anymore, and it's not necessarily like words, but what your mind holds on to are beliefs, right? And this is where the self-sabotage comes in, because when we repeat those, and this is also why depression gets so dark, is because it's that cycle of thought, feeling, action. Because really the only thing we can control are our thoughts, right? And when you get those negative, critical inner voice thoughts bubbling up, you can say, excuse me, no, I don't want to believe that about myself anymore, because really it's not true. And here's the other thing, even if you don't believe what you're telling yourself, you are worthy, you are enough, you are everything that you want is available to you. You can do it. You have confidence, you're lovable, you're connected, all of that. So even if you don't believe it, you start repeating that, because your mind will use those words and start to break apart all of the critical things it's telling you, as long as it's repeated and enough times. So you can change your mind, but it takes a little bit of time, right? And it takes repetition. But the same as learning an instrument or learning anything, you can learn to be clean.
Yeah. You can learn to be clean. You can learn to be happy. You can teach yourself whatever. And I love this, because I was actually I just posted something about how tools don't work, like the tools for change don't work unless you use them, because your mind's first instinct, like you've been saying, is to keep you in your comfort zone. So when you work with a therapist, work with a coach, work with whoever, and you have these tools, you have this toolbox of things to use to change your mindset, change your behaviors, your first instinct is going to be to sit on the couch, not do it.
Exactly. That's why I never, the only homework that I give my clients is that they have to listen to this audio that I provide them. With addiction, I say at least twice a day, with addiction and anxiety, because the more you listen to it, the more effective it's going to be, right? It's like when we get up and do 5 minutes worth of meditation, and then we are not good to ourselves for the rest of the day. It's just not enough, right? You need to have that repetition and then confirm everything that's in the audio. You can say to yourself in a conscious state throughout the day, or stop the negative talk, right? Stop this job is killing me, or this commute is driving me crazy, because your mind doesn't understand exaggeration. It takes your words at face value, right? So and even I've had to stop myself, because I used to do things like if I'm distracted, I'm thinking about something, and I leave the house and I go to lock the door and I've left the keys inside the house, I'll say, oh, well, that was stupid. It's like, no, you're not stupid. You were distracted. You were thinking about how to help somebody. So your mind was just focused on something else. So you're smart. Like you can't, that's the other thing. You need to sort of speak to your mind in a positive tone. You can't say, I'm not stupid. You have to say, I am smart.
Yes.
Or if you say, I don't want to be nervous. Say, I want to be confident. So because your mind doesn't really understand the negative and it doesn't understand the future. You can't say, I want to drop 20 pounds by Christmas kind of thing. Like it has to have the present and the positive, and it has to be exciting words in order to stimulate it. And then it will listen and it will follow what you're saying. So with this method, that's the thing though, that's the only homework that I'll give you is to listen to this audio that feels really good to listen to. You don't have to journal. You don't have to do anything else if you don't want to. Obviously, that's going to help, but this is all I require of my clients. So there's no tools. Like I take care of the tools and we use all of them in the session. And then once the session is finished, then we've started to shift everything. And because the root cause has been dissolved, that's when we can lay in the new neural pathways of what you really want. And it's effortless. I've had clients like text me a few days later going, what did you do? My cravings are gone. And it's like, well, because we told your mind you didn't want them anymore, right? We
Yeah.
told
Yeah.
your mind that it's not, that the drug or the alcohol is not pleasure for you anymore. Well, it used to be, it's outdated and it's wrong and it's false. And when you communicate with your mind in that deeply relaxed state, it gets it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a total believer in hypnotherapy. I think I told you I'm like a lifelong learner. I have I just started my second master's degree.
Amazing.
I know,
Congratulations.
because I'm crazy. My husband's like, I said, don't worry, I'll be done by the time I'm like 45. He's like, no, no, we're gonna be geriatric and you're still gonna be going to college.
But that's okay. My friend's dad is in his 90s and he's going back for his second degree. Like he actually goes into the university and sits in
Yeah,
the lecture hall. Everybody loves him. He's like, never stop learning. So that's a
yeah,
good thing. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm a total believer in it. I've learned about it. I know the benefits of it. Um, but what would you say to a skeptic? Like how would you address skepticism around
I
hypnotherapy?
kind of, well, people who are skeptic, I won't work with them because
Yeah,
it's not my job to convince somebody that this is what they need to do. I know that I work really well. I'm very confident that I'm an excellent therapist. And like I said, I have a 99% success rate with my clients. And this is from everything to anxiety, depression, motivation, smoking. I do smoking once in a while, not a lot, but addictions for sure, alcohol for sure, and or even stepping into your power, even wanting to feel more confident, because as we age, sometimes our confidence starts to slide, and we can kind of maintain it for a while, but then it's like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to feel like I'm not good enough to go to this event. I don't want to feel like I'm not good enough to do this. So, I just need to know why I'm feeling this way. And I just want to change that or step into that performance mindset. I work with athletes, I work with salespeople. So, both ends of the spectrum, right? If you're doing okay, like there's always room for personal development where you can just, you want to sort of level up a little bit and feel better and not feel like you need to procrastinate or not feel like there's something holding you back. A lot of my clients say, I've got this block, like I'm educated, I'm articulate, I communicate well, but something is stopping me from doing this and I have no idea why, right? Or even if people know why, I had a client that came to me with a fear of public speaking, and she was a communications expert. But she knew why. She knew because she had this traumatic memory of her being in grade school and trying to read a poem, and the teacher was chastising her to do it louder, to do it faster, and the classroom started laughing at her. And she said, I know why. I know it's because of this, but I can't tell my mind. Like, I'm a grown woman, and there's no reason to kind of have this fear anymore. So I worked with her, and in the middle of the session, she's like, I feel it. I feel it working this time. And she tried everything, EMDR, tapping, hypnotherapy. And I said, right, but rapid transformational therapy is not hypnotherapy. It's a version of hypnotherapy, but it's a very advanced and upgraded method compared to traditional hypnotherapy, because traditional hypnotherapy is putting the client in hypnosis or a very relaxed state and then just giving them suggestions, whereas rapid transformational therapy is amazing because it's got this curve where you look for the root cause, you find that cause, and then when you reverse that, then you start doing the transformation and the reframing, and then the installation at the very end of the new affirmations and the audio. So it's very powerful, and my clients love it because they're amazed at how fast it works, and they're also amazed at the connections and the discoveries that they've made. Like, they'll come out of session and we'll have a chat, and they'll be like, I would have never remembered that, because our minds store everything. Our minds know exactly why we developed an addiction. And I'll say to my clients, okay, I'm going to count backwards from 5, and your mind is going to show me a scene or a memory that is the root and the reason of why you developed an addiction. And then I'll say, okay, what's it showing you? How old are you? And many times the clients are below the age of 9, because this is when our subconscious minds are formed. I worked with a guy who was binge drinking. He could stop drinking for months, but then he would go on a bender for like 10 days, and he would drink like a 26-ounce bottle a day. Like, he was slowly killing himself. And, and all 3 memories that he went back to were before the age of 7. And people say, I developed an addiction because my dad had an addiction, my grandfather had an addiction, my grandmother or whatnot. Addiction is in my family for generations. But
I just have that mindset stuck in there.
Exactly, because your beliefs create who you are. Marissa says, first you make your beliefs, and then your beliefs make you. And when you believe this, then it's going to happen in your life, right? Like, if you believe you're going to go to an event and you're going to feel awkward and nobody's going to talk to you, and you're going to show up and you're going to have that weird energy from that belief. And then what you imagine will come true. But if you imagine, hey, I'm going to go to this party, I'm going to see alcohol all around me, and I'm going to be like, thank God I don't drink anymore. And you celebrate that. And that just really reinforces the pleasure, right? I said to one of my clients, I said, when you walk through the grocery store now, you can just pass by that wine aisle and look at it like it's an old boyfriend who was toxic. Yes. Right? I love making that comparison, because people go, oh my God, I can just compare it to my ex, right? And guess what an ex is? Manipulative, toxic, talks you into things you don't want to do, all of that stuff. And you can say, you know what? We're done. I am breaking up with you. And it's so powerful when you kind of look at that, go, no, you are in my rear view mirror, my old friend, because I want so much more for my life. I deserve better than you. Right?
Yes.
And even when you're looking at the people who are drinking, who don't have an addiction, it's like, do you really want to be like that? No, because they're not their true selves. And so you can, like, turning down a drink and saying, You know what? I'm good actually, because I've been really feeling a lot better without it. Then that gives you power even over the person offering it rather than feeling like the weirdo, because
Mm-hmm.
we're in this generation now of mocktails and feeling good about ourselves and being our authentic selves, which everyone is so talking up, which is amazing. But our authentic selves don't need to be masked with numbness or alcohol, or you don't need the alcohol or the drugs to feel the confidence. If you are your authentic self and tell yourself you are enough, and then that's what you're going to portray yourself as, and
Yeah.
so it's a beautiful thing talking to your mind. Even when I first started doing media and podcasts and media interviews, like I was understandably nervous for the first couple, but I would use my techniques. I would say it would turn that into excitement, because your body doesn't know the difference between nervousness and excitement. So if you tell yourself, I'm so excited to do this interview, I can't wait, I know what I'm talking about, I'm an expert, I communicate well, I'm articulate, like you just start telling yourself all the positive things. And then then you feel the change in my body or your body when you say, I'm so excited, I can't wait for this to happen, it's going to be so much fun, it's so exciting. And you're going to notice a shift in the energy in your body simply by those words, because our words create our feelings. Emotions are simply chemicals that are dropped into our bodies from our thoughts, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then when they got sort of that energy comes into our heart radiates this as an electromagnetic field. It's called neurooscillation. It's really cool. Like, I'm not a scientist, but I'm fascinated by how the mind works, because just through my own experience in telling myself different things, you feel the shift in how you feel, how you think, how you behave, how you act, all of that stuff. And it's wild and it's very powerful. So that's the message that I like to deliver to people, is you don't have to be stuck. It's easy to get out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say you're not stuck because you're not a tree. You can move.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something that stuck with me and I wanted to repeat it. And I think it was thought, feeling, action.
That's the cycle. Yeah. And our
Yeah.
action actually reinforces the thought, right?
Yeah.
So if we have a thought like, I could never go to that event, nobody will like me, like just taking social anxiety or even addiction, I could never go to that event because I'll probably I won't be able to control myself, right? And then what does that make us feel like? It makes us feel powerless, it makes us feel helpless. And I know AA teaches powerless, but we are not helpless, right? We do have power over our minds and on our feelings simply by changing our thoughts. And then that feeling, what does it do? It creates the action. And what do we end up doing? We end up isolating. And that isolation is what reinforces the thought, right? So
Yeah.
it's
That
like
I,
that
yeah.
cycle. And like I was saying earlier, depression is when that cycle just gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper of, I'm worthless, I'm a nobody, I'll never be anything, nobody will ever like me, I will never find love. And when we tell ourselves those things, your mind is like, oh, that's what you want to believe, okay, let's believe that. It doesn't care if you're happy or sad, it just follows what you want. And again, from the words you say to yourself and the images you create in your imagination. So that's how it works.
Yeah. Oh my
But it
goodness.
can be reversed. The negative cycle can be
Yeah.
reversed. So
Yeah.
when those negative thoughts bubble up, don't buy back into them. You can say, my mind is giving me that thought of I'm a nobody, but say, actually, that's wrong. And then start telling yourself all the good things that you know about yourself, right? I'm skilled, I'm kind, I'm a caring person, I have a big, beautiful heart, I'm a great friend, I would help anybody. if they needed it, because I know that person would help me. I'm great looking, or I'm trying to, do this, and I'm good at motivating myself, or whatever qualities that you love about yourself, and create them and find them and repeat them, so that your mind is like, oh, okay, that's what you want to believe about yourself. All right, then we'll start shifting those old beliefs, because our mind will hold on to beliefs, like I said, generally ones that we've created since we were 0 to 7 years old is when the subconscious mind is mainly formed. But then the mind looks for patterns, and it looks for proof of all of those beliefs, but they will only stay there until we change them. And we do have the power to change them. You had the power to create them, and you do have the power to change them.
Wow. So powerful.
It is. It's really amazing work. Now, do you see, when I go back to say that I help my clients, with these who actually have been in, many of them have been in therapy for years and years, or months and months. And I help them in 1 to 2 sessions or 1 to 3 sessions. We're trained to say 1 to 3, but I've never actually done 3. About 20% of my clients do a second session, but most are cured. Cured. I mean, they have the shift that they want in the one session. So now, do you sounds more realistic now that I've explained it, right?
Yeah. It makes total sense.
It's all science. Like, it's not woo. I'm a spiritual person, and if I have a spiritual client, I will bring some of that into it. But if people are 0 spiritual, then it's fine. I don't have to bring that into the session at all, because the session, it works with pure neuroscience. So
yeah. Awesome. So, okay, one last question and then I'll let you go.
All right.
So if there's someone out there who is struggling with self-sabotage, addiction, and they've tried everything and they're beating their heads on the wall, what would you tell them?
Tell them to call me, because I can help them. This is like, my clients come to me when they've tried everything and they're just at that stage of readiness. I call it stage 4. It's not a spouse telling you to get clean. It's not a judge telling you to get clean. It's not, maybe my family and friends are right when they say I have a problem, maybe I should quit. It's at the stage where I want this out of my life. I don't want to pick up. I don't want to use. I don't want to feel like I'm beating myself up all the time. I don't want to feel like there's cravings going on in my head all the time. And I just want this out of my body. And that's when clients call me. And then when they're at that stage of readiness, I'm like, perfect. This is going to work brilliantly for you, because you're really, really sure. I need that 10 out of 10 commitment as far as this is what you want. Because if it's 9 or 8, I'll say come back when it's 10, because that's when you're going to have the success. So I also do a really deep dive, even before the session. So my clients will fill out an intake form. First of all, if you just want information, just go to my website, advancedmindhealth.ca, because I'm in Canada. And you can look at all of the information. You can read the testimonials, look at my other podcasts, read my story about my husband, and all of that's what I've been through and how I want to help people, like, just get out of this emotional pain, because there's no reason for it. Marissa developed this method because she said, if you had chest pains and you went to a heart doctor, he wouldn't say, come back next week and let's talk about it. Like, he would send you to a specialist to figure out why you're having chest pains, why you are in discomfort, right? But with emotions, this country doesn't deal with that emotional pain as well as it does with physical pain. And this is what we need to do. And this method does that. So even if you just want more information, just call me and I can explain to you what the process is. And if you decide not to work with me, that's perfectly fine. It's not high pressure. I don't even say, so do you want to do it? Like, I let the client decide whether they want to work with me or not. And because if they're unsure, then we're not a fit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can call me, we can develop a rapport, and you can ask questions, you can think about it, or you can say, sign me up, let's do this, and then start feeling better right away.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for the
And
platform. Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
so important to get the message out that, if you're struggling with anything emotional, it's not your fault. It's your programming, right? And if you fear like you're being judged, or fear that, what you want, you can never have. It's all untrue. It's all in a matter of how to change your thought processes. And it can easily be done, especially with a facilitator and this method, and myself for sure. So thanks for your time,
Awesome.
Teresa. It was great to meet you. And I love your work
Yes.
as well.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll link all of your contact. I'll put your website in the show notes, and that's where people will be able to connect with you.
Cool. I'm really excited. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. So until next week, guys, be well, be kind, and may you find some joy this week. Bye.